Hey, hey, hey! And we are live. Happy days for another chit chat with myself, and we have Sleeping Warrior, Nathan Oakley, and Life is Short. Hopefully, we'll be getting a couple more people to join too. Let me just check that everything's up and running. Are you guys there?
Yeah, man.
No, I'm on mute.
You're on mute.
That's the best line ever when John's trying to talk.
Why do you always talk over me?
He came up with that. I'm on mute, and now you're doing it to him when he's getting all frustrated and trying to plug his show. You know, be here or be there or whatever he says wrong. And then you're like, I'm on mute. Buggers, aren't we? Evil.
We are.
So
we didn't have
where
a
are
show.
we at these days?
Well, we didn't have a show today with. Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
I tell you what, I like not having to do housekeeping. Sometimes it takes that long to get through housekeeping. It's like the whole show. Feels nice not having to do it. In a nice way, of course.
Sure. Once, I mean, don't get me wrong. When the channel was down over Christmas, you were calling me up about how you were twitching and having flat housekeeping withdrawal symptoms, walking around your house going, any signs of axial rotation?
Flat Earth withdrawals.
That's it.
Speaking of withdrawals, you didn't do a show today, Dathan. Tut. What happened there?
Well, I set it up as such, so over the last couple of days I'd rearranged the schedule so I could have Thursday off. My sister just came up from the south coast with her kid. We went out to Warwick Castle, watched the birds of prey. It was lovely. But yeah, there is a show, so in about, 25 minutes from now, there'll be an extended after show on Nathan Oakley 1980. Don't be here if you're watching Ranty. Obviously, stay tuned.
So which one's this? Which one's this? Is it an after show or?
Yeah, there's a bumper after show, so it's well over 3 hours long. But
wow.
You know, it's got, like all of them, it's got the live show sandwiched in between there somewhere. That went out to a limited audience on the second channel. So I'd do it that way. So yeah, there might be at most maybe 100 people who tuned in. So it might have a couple of hundred views when I switch it off. But that means probably 120 people actually watched it. But the vast majority of people won't have seen it. So they definitely haven't seen the pre-show and after show. And only a limited number of people see the live show. So when it goes out at 10 o'clock on the main channel instead of 2 o'clock, it's effectively new to most people who are watching it, 90% of them.
Cool, and Life is Short. It's been a while since we spoke.
Yeah, no, hey guys. At one point I was working on like appendices, I guess, to the vision kind of optic stuff, and I was going to do like kind of proving each point to the best of my ability, trying to find a flat surface, right, and then having optical obstruction across it. And I had it, it was like a small lake, maybe 300 feet, completely docile with perfect air and water temperature and everything. And then, the Earth calculator saying that there's, less than a centimeter of obstruction on this thing. Actually, it was almost like a few millimeters, but I had obstruction of at least a couple inches at one point. So anyway, but then I was like, I need to verify that this lake is actually straight or flat. And so I went and got some lasers and stuff like that. And then the headache began, right? So trying to prove to a accurate or precise way that something is flat with the tools that we have is very difficult across 300 or 400 feet.
We don't really have to prove it's flat. We just need to demonstrate that it's not following the curve that we're told that it should follow.
Yeah, and that definitely occurs. In fact, but anyway, I was doing that, and then I was going to have that as like one appendix, and then the other appendix was going to be on refraction. And I have a bunch of papers that kind of show that negative K value. And I was going to kind of go through that and deep dive that a little bit. And then small obstructions in the foreground is kind of an easy one. But anyway, I was going to do that, and I had all this stuff kind of teed up, and then I got kind of sidetracked by John and this whole the relative density argument. It just kept kind of like nagging in the back of my head. At first, I just didn't really think about it too much. I just thought it could be or couldn't be. I don't know. I didn't want to take a stance. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, man, there has to be gravity, right? Because you're just like bred with this Newtonian brain.
F equals
you know
ma,
I mean?
right?
And then you just, anyway. So now here I am. I'm trying to deep dive that and trying to get to that point, because I'm kind of thinking that you don't necessarily need it now, because if you had a realm that was set up a certain way from the beginning and had certain cycles that kind of kept it going to a certain extent, you might not need it. But I have to work through it, like with a lot of different examples. So we're doing like boxes with strings and balloons, and I mean, you name it, you just come up with an example of why it wouldn't or would work in this particular example, throwing a ball up in the air versus throwing a ball across the table, all that kind of stuff, and just trying to figure it out that way. And anyway, that's where we're stuck kind of now. But it's taken me down a path I think that I never thought I would go down, and actually I think it's some pretty cool revelations. So anyway, I think that's my next project. I just have to get it more refined before it's ready for prime time, I guess.
But what about this lake that you had? You was talking about that, and then you changed subject.
Yeah, well, no, that was just, hey, can you have obstruction over a perfectly flat surface, right? Because all my videos, everyone is always, you can't have that, you can't do this, you can't do that, and that's the one where I'm like, I don't know that I can prove that. Because I have to prove a flat surface. So that's a lot harder than people think. But you're right. I mean, I don't have to prove that. I can just say, well, it's not in accordance with this other calculation. But they tend to, obscure that too. So anyway, it's not even for them really. It's just for me too. It's for my peace of mind. That's the only reason I do any of this stuff, right? That's the only reason we're all here. It's so that we can kind of get to a sense of resolution and understanding that seems to make sense. And I think, Anthony, you put it great with the relative density discussion, it's so simple, right? You're like, it just makes sense to me. It's so simple. And I was like, that's actually not a bad answer. And if someone asks you to go further, you don't actually have to, which is kind of crazy to think about. And that gets into the deep dive part of this whole thing. But anyway, so more to follow.
I tell you what's beautiful. When Rumpus came on the other day, he cited a document and he only read half of it. There was two sentences that one followed from the other. He read the first part, but he ignored the second part. Obviously, that was a foul. It was quote mining to the extreme, because it totally changed the context for Ranty. Ranty said he didn't feel as though I made my point, and I'm like, Ranty, I clearly did. He's clearly, but then when Ranty realised that he'd done what he'd done, he changed his position and said Rumpus is just a lying sack of shit. But in that discussion, Rumpus brought up in the background a conversation with a guy he'd had called Julian Bloomfield, and he's an MIT professor who specialises in general relativity. And basically, I had asked Julian Bloomfield, what is it that makes Newton's apple, when the stalk snaps and it falls from the tree, what is it that makes it accelerate initially? Because obviously it's supposed to be gravity, right? But if you're asking a general relativist, a general relativity specialist, he's not going to be able to answer it, because there is no explanation for it. There's no empirical, or there's no ability to test it with experiments, because it's a mathematical concept. And he failed. Now, he thinks that I was trolling him, so he told Rumpus that I was misrepresenting everything he said. But what he doesn't realise is that I wasn't misrepresenting everything he said. I knew he wouldn't be able to answer it. But what's interesting is that an MIT specialist isn't able to explain what is it that makes the apple initially move, because he can't use, if he's an expert on general relativity, He can't use Newtonian principles because he knows they've been superseded. That's the reason why I asked him. So it was just glorious to see this guy not being able to answer my question and deem me as a troll because he said I was misrepresenting all of his answers. And I'm like, you're a specialist on general relativity. You're not going to be able to argue that it's a force called gravity when you know it's not a force. And obviously he wasn't able to do it. But if you think about it in its most rudimentary force, an expert at MIT can't tell you what made the apple move initially. How ridiculous is that? That's what's happened though.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the more you go deep into something, the more questions kind of come up. And so that's what I was trying to get at is like, where's a good stopping point to say this is as far as you need to go. You don't really need to go further than this because when you do, you're going to create more questions than answers. And so I feel like kind of relative density is potentially that point where you can just stop there. You don't even have to go further with the realization that the more you go, the more you're not going to be able to answer. But anyway, more to follow. There's, we've tried to figure that out too. Like, I've looked at it. That was one of the kickers too. Was you can't have down without up, and you can't depending on the medium in a less dense medium, and you can't have up without down in a more dense medium, and then the object, and there's cause and effect, right? So that was one of the other kickers too that kind of led me to. But anyway, I don't want to get into that stuff because I don't have it all like figured out right now to the point where I'm satisfied. So
your curvature stuff though is like, okay, I appreciate what you're saying about not being able to actually verify something as being flat, and it's also like I've thought about. But yeah, now I think about it, you go, yeah, how do you actually? We've seen all the tools at everyone's disposal, and we've seen all the tests, and we understand what they're trying to disprove when they're doing them. But when you put it into a different context and say, well, how do you actually verify fluid dynamics? How do you actually get to prove that lake is flat? Even over, you're not even talking a massive distance. It's in hundreds of feet, right?
Right. Yeah. No, because I use a laser, but my laser refracts, right? And it's going to start bouncing all over the place. So the only way I know how is to get a really expensive laser, but which I think wouldn't refract too much over 300 feet, but it has to be really precise. Anyway,
I've got to give some globe head. There's going to be globe heads watching, so we're talking about refraction. That would be real refraction, as in things that happen in the atmosphere that cause light to change its path, as opposed to terrestrial refraction, the fundy version of refraction, which is to say that they assume a radius value and then apply a mathematical construct to a presupposed R value. That's terrestrial refraction, the fundy version of it. Nothing to do with taking air temperature measurements or working out how much the light is actually bending, because they just arbitrarily apply it to their mathematics. But just thought I'd drop that in case anybody, fundamentalist or otherwise, in the audience misunderstands your meaning of the word refraction. We're talking about real things that happen.
Real refraction.
Yeah.
Real refraction.
No, I mean, we think about like K values. Let's say you have a negative K value. That's incredible, upward refraction, right? Because that has the curve of Earth even factored in. So even when you have a positive K value, that's still potentially upward refraction. 0.0 level light would be the subtraction of the Earth curvature from K. So anyway.
So, sorry, go ahead, Nath.
I was just going to say, the only nice point for you that I see in this debate is the fact that you don't have to really trouble yourself with the rebuttals from the globe heads, because, I mean, anybody can go and check out Tim Osmond's list of all of the things that they call Earth curve, and that's useful for a person on your sort of research path, because when you're looking into it, you don't need to think, well, what are they going to say this effect that I'm observing or trying to quantify is? They'll just call it R. It doesn't matter what it is. Atmospheric condition, that'll be Earth curve. Limitation of the camera, that'll be Earth curve. It'll all get called Earth curve, because that's the only thing that goes through their begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator. So you don't need to concern yourself particularly deeply with what the rebuttal is going to be, because they'll just call it Earth curve, right?
Yeah. No, when he first came out with that, I was like, oh, that's a good one. He got us there, right? I mean, I didn't care, but I was like, oh yeah, good one, right? But then when you came back with the opposite view of that, I was like, nope, that's even better.
Well, yeah.
They call everything Earth curve.
Yeah, they do.
Well, they want a nicely, neatly packaged alternative. So often it's the case that on the debate, they'll give you their just so story, and regardless of how well you unpack it, they'll say, well, what's your equivalent? And it's the same with the Earth curve calculator. We had it. I can't remember who did it. Someone did it on the one of the after shows. It might even be the one that goes out in a few minutes on Nathan Oakley 1980. Anyway, it might be on that one, but the guy did exactly that. He's like, well, how do you explain it with perspective? And it's like, I don't need to explain it. What are you talking about? You've got a model. I'm pulling it apart, and every single thing that goes through that model, every single observation is going to get called Earth curve. And you're asking me what my explanation with perspective is. Who cares? I just need to demonstrate why your Earth curve maths are incorrect. I.e., they exclude hijack. Let's get it right. Perspective. But beyond that, I don't have to provide any alternative.
Show me where you excluded all those other variables, and there's no answer to that.
Exactly, but there's no need for us to provide some alternative just so story or bullshit mathematical calculations. I don't need to provide that. I'm not asserting that the Earth is doing something that it doesn't appear to be doing using a mathematical reification of a globe model. That's not my bag, But there we go. We're challenged to come up with our own just so story in replacement. And I mentioned this or dragged this out a little bit. Sorry, Ranty, because you're doing that sort of legwork, and some people might view that as you looking to offer up a story. And it's like, you're under no obligation. You're doing this as like a journey of discovery. Right. You're sharing it with us, and that's fantastic. I'm very grateful. A lot of my understanding in this regard comes from you. My argument's strong because I've got the understanding from you. So that I'm eternally grateful for. But by the same token, you're under no obligation to provide any alternatives to anybody for anything. The fact that you're looking into it doesn't mean that suddenly you're going to be put to task by some fundy globehead to give your version of their just so story that we've pummeled. Just want to point that out for the audience's benefit. That was all. Sorry, Ranty.
Yeah, no worries. No, it was just what you were talking about before about this relative density. Because you're a member of FE Core, same as myself. But you know that, for instance, and I don't want to sort of like cause a rift here, but I know that Globebusters Bob, for instance, is very, very set on there actually being some kind of gravity. And there is a big argument going, back and forth between relative density and this gravity. I mean, how do you see that going? Have you spoken to Bob about this?
Well, I haven't, because this is kind of new for me. Probably within the last 5 weeks, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. So I've kind of wanted to sit on it and just ponder it. You know what I mean? And just kind of really think this out. If it can happen, because I was definitely on the other side when I started thinking about it. Before I had no stance, right? I was just like, I don't know yet. I'm not going to make a stance necessarily. And then, then I started to think about it. Well, if I have to kind of figure this out, how can this occur? How can this, manifest these effects? And then I was like, just kind of caught in this, I guess your upbringing, you want to call it, where these things are so inbred in who we are, from even just atomic theory, that you have to explain things a certain way, and I couldn't. But I don't even remember specifically like when it dawned on me, but it was just kind of like, I think the first thing was cause and effect that kind of triggered me. Like, you can't have this effect of down without a cause, and I just kind of went from there. And so then it kind of dawned on me that if things were set in this realm to begin with in a certain way, then why does there need to be a down? There doesn't. There doesn't need to be. So anyway, it's more conceptual in my brain that I see it that way, and so I wanted to do like a presentation on it to really hash it out. And the more I did on this presentation, the deeper it went. And so now it's pretty in depth, but now I'm kind of working with John to kind of figure out, like, can we use this to really explain all things? Is there a point where this kind of breaks down? And so we're just kind of hashing it out right now. So I don't know.
Cool. Somebody that of interest that might be of interest to you is I'm just going to put up the channel. Obviously, you guys know Taboo Conspiracy, right?
Yeah, Ben.
Should be
Yeah.
hidden by the Earth.
So I'm just going to pause that. So way back here, we've got this this new channel that started off, and Ben has put this this observable reality out. So he had 24 or 25 subscribers when he did it yesterday, and currently he now has, thanks to the promotion. By the way, this is great. By the way, because this is just showing the power of a channel that can shout you out. So when you have hardly any subscribers, if you're doing good content, you know, people can shout you out, and he's already on 640 subscribers. He's gone up massively in just one day. But again, he's doing all the sort of observations that I was doing this time last year, except in my location we get this massive inferior mirage. He seems to be getting the great weather, so it's really worth going over and checking his channel out. Observable reality, he's got some fantastic observations, clearly shore to shore over incredible distances. He's even got a friend of his that has a boat, and his friend drives the boat over and across this sort of like stretch of water, so they can get real good distances. They've got plans and everything. It's really, really cool. I can't say enough to go and check this guy out. Observable reality. I'll paste. Actually, firstly, what I'll do is I'll post Nathan Oakley's live stream that he'll be doing soon. It's not a live stream. It's a pre-show and after show. So that's for Nathan's, if you want to go over there and watch that. If you want to stay on here, great, perfect.
Yeah, stay here. A different show.
And just one bit, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna post Observable Reality's channel link. So if you want to go over there, guys, and subscribe to this guy, watch his stuff. It's excellent, you know. So all the people that I would imagine that are in this chat right now, a lot of you guys have seen me doing this kind of stuff. The guy gets low. He's obviously got a P900 or a P1000. He goes down to about half a foot. He's got a guy with a boat. He's looking over incredibly straight and flat water. Just shore to shore observations. Absolutely brilliant. He's got tons of stuff up there, loads of videos. So I would highly recommend you guys going over there and giving that channel a bit of a boost.
Can I give you just a bit of kudos? So I love that, Ranty. You know, you're building up your channel, you're building up your reputation at the moment, and the fact that you're paying it forward, sharing the love, shouting out other little channels, I really respect that. That's excellent. So what was his name again? I'll go and subscribe.
Observable Reality. So I'll just post the link again in the chat. So if anybody wants to go and jump on over, that would be great. Also, we've had a guy in the chat called Stephen Steen, and he says that he has an excellent video. It's his very first flat Earth video. I'm considering playing it. It's only 2 minutes long. What do you think? Should we give the guy a platform here?
Have you watched it before?
I haven't. No. So this will be.
I wouldn't. I'd save it for your next show. It might be wonderful, and I'm sure he's great. But you know, I wouldn't risk it on my show. That's just self-preservation as opposed to anything personal against that guy whose name I didn't.
Ranty, there's another. Sorry, Nathan. Ranty, there's another guy that I think you've done. You've seen Exploring the Plane, his channel.
Oh yes.
He's got some awesome windmill stuff that will just kind of trip you out with like temperature inversions and stuff going upside down and backwards, and he's got great stuff. So.
Okay, so Paige says go for it, and by the way, who you just said there, I've actually given him a massive shout out too. I think it was about 2.5-3 weeks ago.
Okay. So
I tell you what, I'm going to take the risk. Here we go. This should be interesting. So bear with me here, guys. I've not even seen it. Nathan's advised me against it, but do you know what? If Paige says it's good to go, I'm gonna take the risk. So it's only 2 minutes long. You guys might need to watch it on the watch page, I suppose, or something like that, because I'm not putting it in Skype at the minute. Anyway, I'm going to play the video. Let's see what it does.
Live chat says no audio.
Yeah, there is no audio coming through on it. I don't think it's got audio on it.
See, this is why I said you should have looked at it beforehand.
Well, maybe it does have audio, and for some reason OBS isn't playing it. I don't know. I don't know. I can't understand it without any audio. I bet there's audio on it, and I can't. I bet there's audio on it.
Bit. Great bit, Ranty. Great bit.
Okay. Well, I'm going to play the rest of the video. There's only 1 minute to go. Yeah, maybe.
Even the dude getting the plug's probably cringing.
Right, okay. Yeah, so enough of that. It doesn't look like there's any audio coming through, so yeah, we'll give that one a skip then.
You need voice meter banana, Ranty.
What?
You need voice meter.
Voice meter?
Anyway,
yeah.
I wanted to say something and I've forgotten it now because it took that long to get past that one.
Oh, sorry, I was just waffling. You know what it's like. I get onto something and I just talk a lot of crap. Anyway, Nathan, you've just started your stream, so if anybody wants to go over there and watch that on the Nathan Oakley channel, the link was posted, so head on over if you're getting bored of this, and if not, stay here. Nathan, you didn't do a show tonight, come on. Today, what happened there?
Yeah, I said, I don't know if we talked about it in the pre-show or whatever you called a bit before your show goes live, but no, my sister came up and I just went out to Warwick Castle and watched the Falcons. I published the Falcons, did a live stream in Warwick Castle. Check it out.
Warwick Castle, I don't think I've been there. Go ahead, Tony.
Nice, nice.
I've got a nice bit of info on Patricia Steer if you're interested.
Yes.
Yeah,
there's a ball earth troll called Jeroen Vestibular or something like that. He's knocking around. He bugs me every now and again. And basically, IMDb, the website that does film actors and stuff, Patricia's got a link, got a page there. And basically, this guy's Jeroen de Blastavula or whatever his name is. He's gone on there and basically criticised Patricia for deleting all her content and all her social media stuff and all of this and all of that and all of the other. And she's responded and she's basically said, I've deleted it all because of internet bullying, cyber bullying. Everybody in Flat Earth knows the reasons why and they all support me, so fuck you. And I was like, well done, girl. So check it out, IMDb, go into Patricia Steer, you'll see her. It's brilliant. Brilliant, shuts him up brilliantly. It's ace.
Well, seeing as you've brought Patricia Steer up, I'm going to bring Antonio Subarats up.
Don't bother.
Did you?
All you're doing is you're just magnetising him and giving him power. Don't bother.
Do
we really have to?
Well, do you know what happened? He turned up at the meetup to confront Roxanne.
Yeah, but
okay. So if you know about
it just
that,
encourages.
Right.
It just encourages the behaviour. So let's not mention it.
Okay.
The other thing I was going to say was balls. It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
Are you sure?
Nah.
So you were saying it was good to do no housekeeping. You don't fancy doing any housekeeping? There's nothing you want to talk about Coriolis effect? Because Spurs Chemo messaged me. Well, he spoke to me today. He phoned me up and he said that he's thinking of going to this Brian Cox, whatever he does, some kind of presentation, and he wants to sort of like get a question to him. So he was going to ask him about gas pressure, but I said, well, how about asking about Coriolis? Which question would you put to Professor Brian Cox if he was given the opportunity?
Prove gravity. What's the proof? What is gravity? That's the best question that you can ask any of them. Ballers still can't give a consistent definition for what it is, and they all know it's not a force, but they still push it. It does me head in.
What about you, Nathan? What would your question be?
Sorry, what was... You'll have to remind me, I wasn't paying attention. I tuned out for a minute there.
Okay. Watching your own show. No, Brian Cox. Chemo wants to go down to a presentation that he's doing and get a question in, because there'll be a question and answer session. I was just wondering, what would be the one question, if you could ask him, would you ask?
If I could ask Brian Cox one question, what would it be? why would you ever believe the sky is a vacuum when it's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics?
Why would you teach it as well?
Right.
What about you, Life is Short?
I'd ask, well, because it's right now. I'd ask him what mass is, and then I would ask him to define entropy. But
well, how would you? Well, I've been following the conversation that you was trying to, because you're doing this with Dr. John D, aren't you? And you're trying to define terms and words and stuff. And what's your theory about this, about mass then, defining mass?
well, I mean that's because when we say relative density, to me the next question is what is density, and that's where the whole conversation with John D started. You know, he would say it's just this, it's relative density. I would say, well, what's density? And he would say it's the mass per volume, and I would say that's good. What is mass? And that's where it always stopped. So that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out right now. But what I'm realizing is that the very act of defining it creates more questions. So that's the deep dive part of this whole thing that I'm kind of coming to terms with and realization of. And so that's why I say when Anthony says it's just density, you can actually say that. And if someone says, what is density? It's perfectly reasonable to say, I don't know. That's the crazy part about this whole thing. So anyway, I don't want to get into it too much, but it's actually really trippy. And so anyway, but I would ask him what he thinks entropy is. You guys go look that up. And that'll take you down quite a few paths. So
I've looked into entropy extensively. I've watched endless boring MIT lectures on thermodynamics. So yeah, I can appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, it's complicated. We can kind of define it with many different terms. We all know kind of what it is and what it does for the most part, but we can't pinpoint it. We can't pin it down. That's kind of the part I'm coming to. So
sure, there's certain simplistic aspects, certainly of the second law of thermodynamics, that you can just summarize to smash someone's argument, like how can you have gas pressure without a container, and then described the effects of entropy taking place in terms of the gas filling the space. So you can, I don't know, do you need to have looked into it to understand that enough to argue it? In other words, could you just take those words, having not looked into it in the slightest, and just say them and still win the argument if someone challenged you? Or would you need a reasonable understanding of it to have the debate in the first place? Obviously, I don't know. I think I've got a pretty good understanding.
No, what I mean is, like, you can say hot goes to cold, right? That's fairly intuitive. We can kind of get that. You can say high pressure goes to low pressure. Makes sense. You can say things decay over time, right? That makes sense. But kind of getting all those things into one concise explanation is the hard part, I think. You see what I'm saying?
We need to redefine entropy and call it decay.
Well,
Everybody knows what decay means.
That's not accurate either, though, is it? If you were to if you're describing, say, gas, let's just keep it related to the subject. So if you've got gas expanding into the space available to it, it's not decaying.
Right. No, I agree with you. I'm looking at this. Here's the punchline: that mass is order, and volume is the absence of order. And it goes into information theory and Claude Shannon and all that stuff, and it's very cool stuff. But anyway, that's
you've got to give us a bit more than that. You're just going to come off sounding like a hippie.
I know, but that's the only way I found to have it be concise without having it be in all these different macro states or variables like temperatures and pressures and things like that. So it's a state of order or of knowledge or of known falling into disrepair or unknown disorder. And that seems to work every time. But
Oh no, that's not true either. So if you've got gas and it's I don't know, in a pressurized container, that when released is no more ordered or disordered upon releasing it, but you're still watching entropy in effect as the gas fills the space. But that's not chaos to order or disorder to order. It's none of those things.
no, the order was the initial gas concentration to begin with, right? So all the gas was concentrated in a particular area. When it dispersed, it lost its order. It went into
it wasn't ordered even when it was pressurized. It was still.
It's relative. It's a relative order compared to what it was.
I don't think so. I may
agree
stand corrected on that. I'll concede for the now.
I've just remembered what it was I was thinking about when I spoke to Spurs recently. I got him to explain some element of this gas pressure point that he's talking about, because I still don't get it. But anyway, I was watching. I rang him and I asked him. I was watching back one of Nathan's shows, and in the chat, you got Beyond the Imaginary Curve, and he's asked Arwin to ask the panel words akin to something like, can he define what a push and a pull is? And he hadn't mentioned it to me or anybody, and it had gone by the wayside. So I said to Spurs, "What's he going on about? Define what a push or a pull is. Is this a thing?" And Spurs said, "Yeah, Dell says there's no such thing as a pull. He says that everything's a push." And I'm like, "Well, magnets pull. What's he talking about?" And I don't know that that's the answer he's looking for, but he wanted to know a demonstration of a pull. And I was like, "Well, a magnet is a pull." I said, "But what about a car towing another car?" I said, "Is that not a pull?" And he said, "No, that's pushing, isn't it?" I was like, "What?" He said, "It's not pulling, it's pushing, because you got the hook that hooks around the loop, and then you've got the pressure. The push is pushing it." And I'm like, "So are you telling me that pull and push are relative terms as well?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, "Dell just says that there's no such thing as a pull." Now, aside from magnets, I was thinking about it. I was thinking, maybe he's right. Maybe there is no such thing as a pull. Maybe the interaction is always a push, with the exception of magnets, because magnets are a funny thing. Nobody really knows how they work. But anyway, my point is that Dell's
Did you ever see Dr. Dolittle?
Yeah.
He got this animal that had got two heads. It was called a push me pull you.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see how that's a. It's just to me, it's relative. I don't see why that's an issue. I don't know. If you're pushing on something, the other aspect may feel a pull. I don't quite get it. Like, anyway.
I might be able to simplify it. I'm not familiar with the push-pull argument from Dell, but Spurs was saying that there's no such. Dell questions that there's no such thing as a pull. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, magnets do pull. So I'm not sure what he's referring to there, but it dawned on me that maybe push and pull are relative terms to the human as well. Maybe Dell's right. Maybe everything is a push, and it's a repulsion.
I know humans definitely go out on the pull.
Well, we all know that Dell struggles pulling.
Ooh.
He struggles on the pull, but
brutal.
It was just that interaction that I had to have with Spurs, and I just thought it was interesting that it came from the concept that push and pull might be an issue. And when I think about it, maybe he's right. Maybe there is no pull force in nature; it's all push.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't know.
And I agree. It seems to make sense, with the exception of magnets, which I'm not sure whether you can have exceptions when it's laws of nature. Perhaps maybe magnets are proof of intelligent design, just to fuck with science and say, "Hey, come on, then explain this."
The thing I'm curious to know from Spurs, I guess. Not that he cares what I think at all, but but I want to know what his view is on gas, just in general. I know Nathan, you've asked him that before. What is a gas? Are they made up of particles that move? And if that's the case, then you have to have gas pressure by definition. It's like a dimensional quality. It's literally force per area. So you just define the area, and there it is. It's a complete arbitrary. I don't know. I don't get how you can't have it. It must exist if you define gas in terms of atomic theory. So if he denies that, that's fine. But then I'd be curious on what the theory is. So, and then we could entertain it. But without that,
there's literally people out there denying atoms, and I don't know.
Well, don't even make it atoms. Just make particles, stuff.
There's
anything.
people out there that deny particles as well.
Matter.
What can you do other than roll your eyes? I mean, seriously.
Well, who was it? I think it was Adam was saying you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So there are some things that do kind of make sense and that have allowed us to get to this point where we do have things like gas laws that do seem to work. So anyway, if they want to throw it all out, I'm okay with that too. I really have no stake in the game, right? None of us really do. I would just be curious on what the
I've said this,
what the alternative is.
Forget the alternative. I agree with you. I've got no horse in this race. I couldn't care less either way. If gas turns out to be fake, so what? Does it affect me? No, not really. Obviously you'll have to reposition your thoughts on certain things. But when it came to gravity, Arwin and Anthony arguing about relative density disequilibrium, well, that was the net result of the argument. There was some movement forward in terms of people's understanding, both on the panel and in the audience. As far as I was concerned, it was good. The end result was good. It was worth it. And it always felt like it was going somewhere. There was going to be some progression. I felt that once in this argument. Not once have I thought, this is good. This will end up in me or the audience or Spurs having a better understanding of this. And not at one stage have I thought this is beneficial.
I mean, I don't have a horse in the race. No one does on this topic, right? It's not something that Flat Earth or Ball Earth, at this point, really feel obligated to pick a side with or to argue vehemently. Like, what's the benefit? Like, is there a benefit on either side to this, or is it just me?
I don't think so.
What we need to know. What we need to know is where Spurs has got this little nugget from. He's obviously been inspired by something, and it might be somebody said something, or he's read something somewhere, or watched a video somewhere. We need to know what it was that inspired him to come out with this sentence, because then we might be able to.
I think it's gravity.
No, that doesn't matter.
It's got to be gravity, because the argument has been that there is no gravity, right? And so when you start thinking about a barometer, you're like, well, it's relative pressure. And a scale is essentially relative pressure. That's the only way I can think that it came from is, well, if there is no pushing down force, then how does a barometer work? That's the only place I can think of where it came from. But they're not realizing, I think, that those are non sequitur arguments. So anyway,
where it came from, I don't see as relevant. That's if it's the argument where it came from. This statement might not make sense, but if it's who it came from and how the discussion took place, it's a genetic fallacy. Yeah, all that matters is what he's claiming and can he back it.
I don't even know if he knows what he's claiming. Is his position there is no such thing as gas pressure, just gas?
His position, absolutely, his position, I've clarified it with him, is exampled by his using a, I don't know, petrol station, gas station, forecourt, whatever you call it, air pressure tyre inflator. And that compressor starts at 0. So his argument, even though this is smashed, and I'll explain how in a second, his argument is that because it's at 0, there is no pressure. There is no normal gas pressure. Equilibrium 0, no pressure. Now, that got smashed by us, or him, bringing up a vacuum, where you create disequilibrium by removing the existing pressure. So, obviously, the greater pressure, the existing pressure, still being in existence outside of the vacuum or pressure differential that you create with a compressor in a sealed chamber. So by bringing up that argument, or by bringing up a vacuum chamber, Spurgeon did his own argument. You can only have that differential. You can't have it dip into minus with gas pressure. The amount of pressure, the amount of collisions with the walls of the container isn't going to go into a minus value. It's just going to get less. It could even potentially reach zero, but it's never going to go into a minus figure. You've just got less collisions with the walls of the container. So when he starts removing it from the air that we're breathing, that undoes the argument that there is no gas pressure, which is his claim. When that happened, that was the point when he refused point blank to concede that. I was like, after 6.5 weeks, if you won't concede on this point, given that you obviously understand or appreciate how a vacuum is created, undoing your argument, I'm done with Spurs. It's like, you are disingenuous and wasting everybody's time if you won't concede at this point, which you wouldn't. So I was like, okay, I don't care what your motivations are. I'm done with this subject. It's not benefiting anything, and your own arguments. I'm done with one of your own examples. So that's it. That's where I drew the line in the sand.
Yeah, like I said, if there's particles and they move, you have by definition pressure. So there's no.
I mean, we had this. So I was just going to say before the show started, I can't remember if it was just before you joined or not, but Anthony and I were discussing it with convection, and it was argued by Anthony that you could have the heat being the replacement for any existing gas pressure, and I just pointed out, well, how is it convecting? What's it convecting through? Without the air, how you can have that process take place in the first place? All of these arguments fall at literally the first hurdle.
Can I just do a massive shout out to Paige, who says, great panel today, ranty, all my favourite FE guys in one place. Thank you very much. $30.99 super chat. Thank you very much.
Yeah, she's thanking you, but she's kind of excluding you also from that list. She's saying, thank you for bringing all of my favourite people here, Ranty.
Excluded.
No, I'm sure she loves you. She sent you a super chat.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think I always thought Spurs was onto something, though, because, you can't tell me that anybody feels pressure at at sea level. We don't feel like we're being squished. We're at an equilibrium, aren't we?
You wouldn't.
I think. I was just going to say, I think Quantum Eraser summed it up when he says, "Has anybody putting this argument forward considered the option of voluntary drug testing?"
Of what? Sorry.
Voluntary drug testing.
Okay.
Like I said, I think you have to unravel particle theory to get to know there's nothingness there. I don't know. I don't see it conceptually yet. But I'm completely open to someone changing my mind. I just don't see how this can occur. There's gas particles and they move. If you stick up any plate of any kind in that medium, you would be able to detect their movement given the sensitivity of the plate.
There is another thought. For the housekeeping question, Nathan, how do you have gas pressure without a container? What we should do for shits and giggles is just flip it the other way around and say, how do you have a vacuum without a container? Meaning space.
Yeah, that was John. He did exactly that on one of the debates. He put it into the housekeeping, exactly that. So it has happened already. So great minds. You're thinking exactly the same as Quantum Eraser because he's already done it. Sorry, he got there first. But yeah, he said exactly that. He said, just to mix it up, how do you have a vacuum without a container?
Yeah, he's right. Because when you think about it, it was, what's his face? Was it not No, what's his bloody name? Is it Apollo that was talking about the vacuum being built the other day?
Oh, that was beautiful. That's going to play out maybe by the time we finish this live stream, but that'll probably coincide with this rounding out and that show going out. So Apollo having his ass handed to him by you, what's playing out pretty much now, or in about an hour's time. I think it'll actually start with you and Apollo at each other's throats. But that was wonderful. I just sat back and listened to you pummeling, and then you started to lose your rag. So for anybody who says, oh, Nathan just gets angry, you get to see Anthony do it. So I let him loose. It's him and Apollo going back and forth. And let's be honest, Anthony, right? I'm not digging at you here. I am, kind of. But Apollo's a really amiable guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. And he was just getting on my nerves because he's conflicted, right? And he won't... I don't know how we can cognitively get past the fact that he's conflicted. It's like, it just drives me mad.
Yeah, well, I can completely relate. It happens to me on an almost daily basis. You know what I mean?
You're ruining the show.
Yeah. So, what's his name? Apollo. He just couldn't square that circle, but wouldn't make any concession or movement in his position or change his validity. He just descended it into farce at the end. You know, I can't remember what he did exactly, but he tried to turn it into some sort of humorous aside to get around it. But ultimately, it's the end of the point is left rather than them saying, "Yeah, you're right. You know, my fundamentalist religious belief in a sky vacuum doesn't work." They go, "Well, I've still got my belief in a sphere at the end," and you're like, "Well, why haven't you conceded any of my points?" And they're like, "Well, I still need to look into something that you just explained 10 minutes ago," and round you go.
I was being mithered then. I got interrupted massive in the middle of my flow. It bugs me how ball earthers just ignore the gas pressure next to a vacuum or gas pressure without a container point. Because if you try and talk to them like on a normal level, not on a sciencey level or not on an evidence level, and just get them to explain to you why it is that they ignore it, they just, I don't know how they do it in their own mind. It's like you're looking at something that contradicts your view, right? There's no evidence to support your position to the contrary. Why is it that you can get past this without any evidence? And it's just like gravity is like, it's like a comfort blanket for a fight.
Ask that question again. How can they what? How can they get past this? What makes you think they're getting past it?
Well, they've got to be getting past it to be able to sleep at night, haven't they? They can't be being dishonest with themselves.
Oh, man, you took the words out of my mouth. Say that again. They'd have to get past it to what now?
Surely they're not being dishonest with themselves, are they?
Just repeat your last statement. They'd have to be honest to get what now?
Sleep at night.
Oh, I hear plenty of accounts recently of fundamentalist religious zealots who seem to be suffering with depression. I'm pretty sure that lack of sleep is one of those symptoms, right? Well, there seems to be quite a few fundies losing a bit of sleep, Anthony. I highlight Haunted House's interview with Conspiracy Cats. Check his channel out, Haunted House. A very candid interview with Conspiracy Cats, disclosing all about his lack of sleep and his struggle to right those wrongs, to square those circles that cannot be squared. Oh, it's very, very interesting to listen to that interview. I assure you, Anthony, the reason that lots of these fundies are suffering depression is because they absolutely are not getting past this. And how are they going to get past it? As you rightly point out, they can't.
Well, I went on Conspiracy Cat's channel because I heard them talking on Jose's channel, and somebody had said they've not seen anything from him for a while. Where is he? And I just thought I'll type in his name. Obviously, I don't subscribe to him, and I wanted to see what his last video was. And he hasn't done a video for more than 3 weeks, which is quite unusual for a guy that's like trying to build his channel and whatnot. He's just not been around, and I'm wondering, has he seen the light? What's going on? I mean, he's probably just been on holiday or whatever, but he's not around. Anyway, somebody on his most recent video, his most recent comment said, "Where are you? I want my daily dose of stupid," or something like that. And he loved the comment, and I just posted underneath sarcastically, he's gone looking for evidence of how you can have gas pressure next to a container without some kind of membrane. I don't know whether they'll see it or not.
Next to a vacuum, not next to a container.
Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean. Words.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Rent, yeah, actually, I got to run here soon. But I wanted to post something for you guys to look at. You might find it interesting. And it's called Schillerian optics. And it's something that I thought was useful. It might be useful to Spurs to kind of look at as well. And it uses mirrors and optical devices to kind of look at air. So, and he does a lot of, you can find tons of YouTube videos on it. It's very interesting for how if you look at it, it's kind of cool because you see how air almost works just like a fluid. It looks exactly like a fluid would. Picture yourself like, underwater and blowing bubbles and things like that. It looks exactly like that, but in a different medium. All relative density, right? So check that out. I think you'll find it interesting. But
Can you spell it? A lot of people listen to this on like a podcast rather than seeing the
I
chat
got
go
it.
by.
I posted it in our little Skype chat thing here, but it's called SCHLIEREN.
Okay, is that something that I can put onto my Google Drive? Because if it is, I'll link it up there and put it into the into the description later.
Yeah, I would think so. The one I have here.
Yeah, but if someone wants to search, I can't even say it myself. Solarian Optics, is that correct?
Yeah, Schlieren Optics. It's
Schlieren.
SCHLIEREN Optics, and it's some pretty cool
Perfect.
stuff. So
Okay, cool. I'll have a look later.
yeah. So
Nice talking to
anyway,
you.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Yeah,
good talking to you guys. We'll talk soon.
Cool, man.
sure.
Yeah.
See you in a bit. So I want to talk about this, guys. Right. So you guys know Gem Panda, yeah?
I haven't seen anything of Gem for months.
But you know Gem Panda.
Yeah.
I'm subscribed to Gem Panda. I saw his most recent thread of videos was a string about debunking a funny thing happened on the way to. I didn't actually watch. But yeah, he's just got a whole string of videos. Go on. What's your point?
So, Tony, on the day in question when we took the Rumpus to court, well, you took the Rumpus to court.
Yeah.
Gem Panda left a comment on my upload the following morning when I, told everybody that the Rumpus had cherry-picked his quotation. So Gem Panda has left a comment, and I'll just read it out. It says, "Oh well, I hope you feel this idiotic nonsense was worth you abandoning your neutral position. Didn't take you long for you to show your true colours, just as expected. I will be suggesting people do not support this show in future and unsubbed." What do you
That's
think?
okay. No one gives a shit what he says anyway.
Yes.
Shout out to Gem Panda.
No, I wanted to bring this up because Gem Panda has quite a following on Discord. He's got his own group over there. But the problem being is that Gem Panda doesn't understand the formats, right? So there's different types of formats, and he goes on to explicitly call out quantum eraser. He says, "Very obviously that is not the case, Ranty, else you would have told quantum eraser that all definitions of the second law of thermodynamics state that it applies to closed and isolated systems, of which the Earth is not very obviously not one." So essentially what he's doing is he's trying to bring into this argument quantum eraser with the format that I used for bringing somebody to court. So the
Can I
thing
address
is,
that argument?
you can in a second, Nate. 1 sec. But quantum eraser, let me just tell you, did a presentation, the same as you, Gem Panda, a presentation. Now, when you bring your presentations, I'm not there to moderate or call out or anything. You come on and you just present whatever it is, and the audience asks you questions, and then they decide afterwards. I'm not judging, I'm not marking, I'm not saying you're this or that or the other. The same with in the actual debates that you actually get into. Essentially, I'm not there I'm just there as a moderator. I don't have an opinion. But when you come to court, and if you're bringing in and you're cherry picking in court, I have a right to call you out on that. Because I specifically asked for you to come in and be truthful. So not Gem Panda, but we're talking about the Rumpus here. So I specifically asked for you to come in and be as honest as you possibly could. I don't ask that on anything else. I didn't ask it on the presentations. I don't ask it on the chit chats. Nothing. It's literally, that's just in the breeze. But when you come to court, which is a completely different thing, I expect the truth. So Gem Panda's getting conflated here. If he thinks that he can bring it, that I'm abandoning a neutral position, right? That's just hogwash, because this is the format. The format is it's the final place to go to court, and that's when I really need you to be on your game. Come along, bring the truth, be honest. And he wasn't, so I called it out, and I'd have done the same if it had been Tony, so it would have made no difference. So Gem Panda, all this and all this is just absolute rubbish. Right,
Gem Panda,
As is his statement. Hold on, I just want to get that addressed. As is his statement in regards to thermodynamics. So, in regards to isolated, open, and closed systems, the laws are described using isolated systems to simplify those laws. They apply equally to open or closed systems, depending on the circumstances, obviously, and depending on which system you're referring to. But the laws of thermodynamics still apply. Their description within an isolated system is a descriptive. It's not an actual. It's used to make it coherent, because it's oversimplifying how gas law in this instance would work. Now, him saying that it only applies to isolated and closed systems is hogwash, because, number one, there are no isolated systems in nature. It does not exist. It's simply used to describe those laws, but it absolutely applies to open systems as much as it does to closed systems. That's nonsense. So him saying it only applies to isolated and closed, well, there aren't any isolated systems, so that's a load of old nonsense. It's used to just describe the law. Just wanted to get that in.
And let me just be... Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Well, if he's going to say by exclusion it doesn't apply to open systems, then what's going on in an open system where hot goes to cold in the Earth's atmosphere and space and all that, and pressure to non-pressure, and what's going on there? Because if that's not going to be described as...
It's nonsense is debunked with a cup of coffee. It's just hogwash.
I don't... Gem Panda who? He's not relevant anymore. I don't know why you're getting worried about him, Ranty. You can completely ignore him.
I'm not worried about him, but the one thing that I wanted to address was mainly the fact that he seems to have a problem with the formats. You know, if he thinks that I want people to understand there is a difference here. If you bring a presentation, you can talk about... You could tell me that the moon is made of fairy dust, right? As long as you do a presentation on it and you talk about it and answer questions, I don't care, right? If you want to tell me it's made of fairy dust, I'm not going to turn around and say you're full of crap. I'm not going to pull you up on it and do a video the next day about it. It's nothing to do with me. That's your presentation, right? The same with the debates. If you get in a debate with someone who then says, I don't believe that the moon is made of fairy dust, right, and you have a debate about it, fine, I'm just going to moderate. But when you come to court and you disrespect the very first court session that I put in place, specifically because we know that there are some flat earthers that do it as well, but a lot of globers cherry pick and don't answer questions, so we have to drag your asses to court to actually put you in the hot seat, hold your toes to the fire. But if you're going to come in and disrespect me and disrespect the court session and how I trying to move things forward, right, and you're going to disrespect that by cherry picking in a court session, which is completely different to a presentation, a chit chat, or a debate, then you are mistaken there, Gem Panda. And if you think I'm not going to call people out on it, you are sadly wrong. And I would do it on flat earthers, globe earthers, hollow earthers, you name it. They'd all get it, right? Because I want something to be different here on this channel. Right, go ahead, Tony.
I think you're worried about Gem Panda for no good reason.
No, I'm specifically targeting Gem Panda because he made reference to this neutral position being abandoned and then tried to bring in Quantum Eraser, conflating two separate formats. The format that Quantum Eraser came in, whether it's right or wrong, was done in a presentation. The format that the Rumpus came in and deliberately misled the court and deliberately cherry-picked his position was in a court session where I asked him to be as honest as he possibly could. Two completely different things, and I'm just making this right now because it was the first court that I ever did, and I'm just making sure that everybody is aware of how these different formats work and what I expect from people when they come. I've opened up the platform so that globe earthers can come in and do a presentation without any hassle, and that's what I've stuck to my word with. But I'm certainly not going to do a court session and have somebody come in and take the piss and deliberately misrepresent everybody and cherry pick quotes that do not, that when read in their entirety actually go against what they were trying to say.
Sorry, just as you brought him up though, he had a presentation on your channel, I believe it was the first, and that was followed up by a rebuttal by Quantum Eraser. Now, is his rebuttal to Quantum Eraser's presentation to say that the laws of thermodynamics don't apply to an open system? Is that his... That's not ad hominem. Is that his rebuttal?
I think so.
Wow.
I think what he's saying is
that it? That's his rebuttal. I just for the audience's benefit. Sorry, I just want to summarise the argument. It'll take me 10 seconds. So, Gem's argument is that men have travelled to the moon. Yeah. Quantum Eraser's argument is the medium that the journey was claimed to take place in violates the second law of thermodynamics. You can't have gas pressure next to a vacuum. The gas would fill the space. The volume, like George Netanyahu conceded, The volume is the amount of volume that the gas has available to it. It's just simple. Now, him saying it doesn't apply to an open system, that shit is debunked by a cup of coffee. An open system that's absolutely being subject to entropy. Wouldn't go cold if it wasn't, wouldn't that, Gem? Fucking idiot. So, that's the best rebuttal he's got. No, I just want to point out to Gem Panda that that's not a sufficient rebuttal. You haven't debunked a natural law with that statement. You've just demonstrated that you don't understand it, clearly. But that's the best rebuttal you've got. Wow.
To be fair, I mean, I don't know this argument, and I'm not going to argue for him. But if I was in Gem Panda's position, my argument would be, well, if you guys are going to play semantics with the meanings of words, and it's described in a isolated system, by exclusion or by failing to mention that it's in an open system, it doesn't apply. That's what I would be arguing. Not saying he is arguing that, but if it doesn't say in an open system, I would be saying, well, why does that not apply?
No, I've already addressed that. An isolated system does not exist. The only purpose of the isolated system is describing how things work in open and closed system in a more simplistic way. So it's used to describe how those systems work. So to say, oh, well, because it's describing it in an isolated system, yeah, it's doing that to describe how the open and closed systems work, not because an isolated system is actually something that exists. It doesn't.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, regardless of the point, though, regardless of whether Gem Panda's correct or incorrect about quantum eraser, I don't care about that. He's cherry...
Oh, he's incorrect.
Yeah,
you can't have gas pressure without a container.
But what I'm saying here is that Gem Panda is accusing me of not calling out quantum eraser for his quote-unquote cherry-picking when he did a presentation, right? And he's trying to say that that's the same as the Rumpus coming into court and deliberately misrepresenting what he brought as evidence, right? Two totally different things, two totally different formats. And the one thing that I didn't like to see from this was that Gem Panda said, I will be suggesting people do not support this show in the future. Why would that be, Gem Panda? Why would that be when I've just specifically told you the different formats? And, you know, what is this? Is it because that the Rumpus has been found out? Is that the reason? Now, if you want to go ahead and tell people to unsub, that's fine. But, you know, I'm not going to stand by and let this go unanswered. So there you go.
You see, my attitude would be unsubscribe, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. See you later, Gem Panda. Bye.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, well, how are you doing? Sorry, I'm a bit late.
No worries. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I might if you mind, I might say something about what you're talking about there.
Of course you can, yeah.
Yeah. 2 points. One is Gem Panda, this character, he putting down your show and having a go about at you about not trying to critique or chastise Quantum Eraser for doing something that wasn't the same as what Rumpus did. He didn't hide anything, and it wasn't a court situation. It's like it's basically saying that that to me says that he's saying to you directly and to the world that I'm okay with dishonesty and whatever it takes to keep my belief alive.
Yeah,
that's how I would view that. And the other thing is that if he has what he was saying, what Nathan was talking about there, about him talking about the gas pressure thing, is like, hey, look, show us a physical demonstration, or else go away. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's okay. It. Show us a demonstration of gas pressure without a container. You can't have a vacuum without a container either, so demonstrate that too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll tell you one of the main reasons I brought the court thing in was, okay, yes, you can just go out of your way and you can just automatically just say to somebody, I want to take you to court over this or whatever, that's fine. But more than anything, it's because I want the process to happen. So somebody does a presentation, somebody else does another presentation, then you have a debate. And if you feel that that person has either won the debate in the through means that were unsavoury or whatever, right? You can take them to court and hold the toes to the fire. It's not the final cause. You can debate somebody, and if you feel that they've in some way misled, you can actually bring them to court and you can make them hold the toes to the fire. This is like a fight. There's like a process going on here where we're trying to get to the truth and dig down through the bullshit.
I think a good thing for the court situation might be if you're allowed to call a couple of witnesses, people who might back up online there and then what you say someone else said. Things like that. If you're allowed to call witnesses, even an independent witness and a character witness, something like that.
Yeah, I think I needed a defendant's lawyer too. So I know we had Tony doing the questioning of the rumpus, but I think it would have been just as. I think looking back on it and listening back to it, it would have been equally as useful to have a Glober defending the rumpus at the same time. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah.
I think if you allow them to call witnesses, Rumpus will call George, and George will come in, and he'll support Rumpus, and then Rumpus will then call in somebody else who'll then support Rumpus, and then it'll just be like consensus. It'll be victory by consensus.
And just to put our shout out to the chat as well, I'm looking for people to do presentations. So globe earthers, flat earthers, if you have a presentation that you want to do, anywhere from 10 minutes to 45 minutes on a particular niche part of the flat earth or globe earth, whichever it is that supports your argument, I'm willing to present it. It's as simple as that. So, if you've got something, I'm going to put my email, I'm going to type my email out now so you can email me, and we can get some of these presentations back on the go. You carry on, guys, for a second.
I thought that was going to be your round out.
Oh.
I was like, good timing for a round out. You plugged the show, plugged what you need in the future. So I thought this is going to be where he says goodbye. Not keep it going while I bugger off.
No. I am going to round up in about 5 minutes, though, because I believe that your show's about to get heated sometime soon. So I'm going to send people over there to listen to that. So.
Fair enough.
But Brian,
this is a really good show, Ranty. Considering you were like, yeah, we'll just have a chit chat. I don't know what the name of the show was, but yeah, nice show.
Yeah, it's a chilled out place. There was a guy in chat before said it's nice to hear Nathan chilled out on Ranty's show for a change. I said,
yeah, kind of. We'll be debating and shouting. I'm not typically a rowing kind of guy. I found myself in debates. It doesn't mean that's necessarily the way I am. I am in a row like that, but typically that's what you get on a debate show, isn't it? You're going to see only that side of my personality. It doesn't mean I'm a miserable fuck. I'm not. I'm actually quite a pleasant guy, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm happy to start. Who's banging around? I'm
Sorry,
happy,
it's me.
I'm happy to do another globe only chit chat too as well. So if anybody wants to set that up or organise it in some way, I'll look at doing that sometime next week. So it sort of balances itself out. So we can hear the globe earthers talking, just like this, and let's hear how they talk about us for a change.
Yeah, this has been like a phone call, isn't it? So this conversation that we've had tonight is a fairly typical conversation that us three, Brian, I'm sorry, we've not talked on these sorts of calls before, but you're excluded from this example. I'm sorry, but certainly, life is short, and us, and mainly us three, have had many conversations like this, and it's nice to just broadcast one, because this is typically just how we chit chat, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, often we can be talking for hours, and it'll be on different subjects about, what's this, what's that, who's doing this, who's doing that, and yeah, that's why I title these chit chats, because it genuinely is. It's just like what we've done for the past 2.5 years. But
yeah, exactly. It's typically at about 9 a.m. in the morning, and I'll get a call from Ranty, which Anthony will get added to, and it'll normally start off with your taxi syndrome, moan about somebody else, stuff that's not broadcastable in that regard. And this was no different, right? We started the conversation off before it live, moaning about Spurs, and then it went live. It was like chit chat about flat Earth for a bit, segue into a moan about various different people. It's just fairly standard stuff. We're just bitches, really, aren't we?
The normal stuff.
Yeah. Oh well.
So, Brett,
Anthony, so just before you do round up, I know it's not flat Earth related. So what's the make of your subwoofer then?
I can't remember. I wrote it down on that thing, didn't I? I'll have to find out and get back to you. I think it's on that picture I sent to you.
I looked at the design of it, but I didn't look at the brand.
I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me have another look.
So is it just going with the stereo system then?
Is it what? Sorry.
It's 2.1. It's just 2 speakers and a stereo and a subwoofer.
Well, I'll say 2 speakers. They're like waist height, and there's like it drops down from 4 ohms to 8 ohms.
That's not how it works. Yeah, it's
were
2
talking
floor-standing
about,
speakers and a subwoofer, though, right? It's not AV speakers and a centre speaker, right? There's no rear surrounds. There's just 2 left. God, this couldn't be a simple. It's just the left and right speaker and a subwoofer, correct?
Yeah, but the left and right speaker's got like 2 mids and 2 tweeters in it, and then you've got the sub behind you, which has got just. I think it's a 9-inch or a 7-inch diaphragm.
That's not what I mean. All I mean is it's not a surround system. It's a stereo system, left and right, with a sub.
Yeah.
That's badass. That's cool.
Yeah. It is. It's really good. I like it.
I love subs. I've had about probably 8, maybe even 10 subs in this room, and farted around with them because they're fussy as all frig. They're really difficult to get right with a room. And the first ever one I had was like this passive sub, and I wired it up and it sounded fantastic. And I'm like, oh, I could do better though, because I was working at a hi-fi shop at the time. So I sold it and then went through half a dozen more subs, just bringing them back and forth from the shop. And none of them worked properly. And I'm like, why did I ever get rid of that Celestial? Anyway, eventually I found like a 1980 subs. There is a point to all this. I'm going to plug someone's channel in a minute. Anyway, I got this 1980 sub that you can tune with these like ports. So I tuned it to the room, got the crossover perfect with my speakers. That's what you're talking about, where the main speakers roll off and the sub starts. Well, you can do that with like in a very analog way with this like 1980 sub I've got. And the sub cost me about £20, and it arrived damaged, and I ended up getting a refund for it. So the sub was effectively free, and it's powered just by the way things have worked out off my most expensive amplifier. So back when I was flogging these amplifiers, I've got one of them when it was at retail. It's obviously 10, 12 years old or whatever it is now. Was about £8,000. So I've got this subwoofer that's free, or 20 quid if you want to look at it another way. It's powered off an £8,000 amplifier. I mean, don't get me wrong, it sounds phenomenal, but it's just a bit of a weird mismatch the way it's paired up. But yeah, I don't know. Subs are very cool. But that's how I ended up with my hi-fi Nirvana with subsonic frequencies after fighting around with them for a number of years and never quite getting it right. And if you've said you've not wired yours up, which is the point of this, apart from a channel plug, which I will get in right at the end. So you haven't listened to it in your room yet?
No. I went to PC World for the wire, and it was $14.99, and I was like, "There's no fucking way I'm buying that." Went onto eBay, got the same wire, $1.99. I have to wait 2 days for delivery, but I mean, you're not going to pay 15 quid for the wire that I want.
Just turn it down. That's my advice. The idea is you don't. This is going to sound weird. The idea is that you don't hear it. You're not supposed to notice that you've got a subwoofer. You know, all it does is, if you've got it right, if you've got it wired up right, the sound will sound more open. Yeah, it won't necessarily sound like you've got any more bass. It's a hard thing to describe how a sub makes a stereo system sound better. It just makes the whole sound stage open up. It makes the whole thing sound more realistic. Yes, when you've got a really deep bass note, it'll go deeper, but that's a very small percentage of the time that you get that on most recordings. So it's not really that it achieves. It just makes the whole thing a bit more realistic, as opposed to what most people's perception of what a sub does, which is give you more bass. Well, yeah, it can do that if you turn it right up, but it normally sounds a load of shit. So, you know, get it to be subtle, and Hi-Fi Nirvana will be yours.
Well, it's more volume, Nathan, is it?
No, not volume.
It's just lower frequencies.
I don't mean volume as in sound. Like, I mean, I mean volume as in up and down sound. I mean volume as in more volume in general.
No.
It's the inclusion of lower frequencies in the sound that you're listening to.
So most speakers will roll off, even if they're really good at 30 hertz. If they're exceptionally good, maybe 20 hertz. You know, that's where they're rolling off. And a sub's trying to achieve lower than 20 hertz, and 20 hertz is well below your hearing level, hence the name subsonic.
Right,
So you're trying to include lower frequencies. The mistake most people do is they get a subwoofer and they just turn it right up and turn the crossover right up. So it's doubling up what your main speakers are doing, and you just end up with this overblown, shit, wanky, flappy bass. Whereas if you can turn it right down and get it to cross over where the speakers end and not be louder than the speakers, you just end up with it, transitioning from higher bass to lower bass without you actually necessarily noticing, because low frequencies aren't really that directional anyway. You can't really tell where they're coming from. So that's what you're trying to achieve. But like I say, most people, I very rarely see people with a correctly set up sub. You just go in and you immediately know they've not got a clue what they're doing, because you just hear lots of sub bass frequencies and you're like, fucking hell. It's not subtle. But that's the idea, and I just wanted to get that in before you set it up. So you're looking for subtlety. It shouldn't be noticeable.
I'll just give you a little tip. I'll give you a little tip. When you
keep it short.
When you're doing a flat Earth chit chat, I've just lost 40 watchers. I had 145 watching. It's gone down to 105. Well done.
It was a ploy to send them all over to the Nathan Oakley Night channel. Bore the living shit out of them. Talk about hi-fi. Piss off real fast.
It seemed to work as well.
Let me get my plug in. It's because I've been watching this guy called Tech Moan, and he just covers obscure, outdated hi-fi, and I love that. So Tech Moan, check it out if any of you didn't disappear and stuck with the conversation about subsonic frequencies. Most of you clearly buggered off already.
Right, well, I'm gonna
Thanks for having me, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just gonna put your link into the chat right now, so everyone can go and head over there. So I'm going to round up, guys. Thanks everyone for stopping by. Nathan, Brian, I know you joined late, but I appreciate you turning up, and Tony, obviously. And yeah, so if anybody wants to do a presentation, email me, ranty@rantyflatearth.com. Anyone wants to do a globe-only chit chat, again, email me or get in touch with me on Skype. You can find me on Skype, Ranty Flat Earth. And yeah, heading over to Nathan's now. He'll be carrying on with his after show, so it's quite entertaining. So I recommend people going and having a listen to that. In the meantime, I'll round up for now, and I'll see you all in the next one.